Evil Duck Workshop is sponsored by Aztec Gummy, producing the highest quality paint masks and templates to help you paint your favorite models. And by Tenna Controls, specializing in custom design of LED chasers, LED sequencers, as well as other timing, lighting, and sound boards for your favorite model kits. Tenna Controls brings models to life. And by La Cultura Azteca, inspiring science, technology, engineering, art, and mathematics by building the studio-scale Starship Enterprise from Star Trek the Motion Picture. Visit Indiegogo and help us bring a new enterprise to life. Become a patron of Evil Duck Workshop. Visit www.patreon.com/Evil Duck Workshop for more information.
Greetings, model minions. Welcome to episode 3 of the Evil Duck Workshop. Yeah, I know my voice sounds like crap right now. I'm losing it because I've got the flu or something kicking in, and losing my voice is something actually a lot of people are happy about, so we'll see how that works out. But anyway, I'll do my best. So in today's show, I'm going to have on Model Basics, we're going to talk about prepping your model before building. I'm going to talk about flocking and advanced techniques. We'll get into that in a minute. And in the section on the Draconian Marauder, it's just going to be kind of a short one because I just really was not feeling very well when I shot it earlier today. So I made it kind of a short sequence. I'll do more next time. And in a final sequence, we're actually going to build a prop today. From start to finish, we're going to be building a TASER for a short film that a friend of mine is making. So without any further gagging and coughing, and before I pass out, let's get started with Model Basics. Few things irritate me more than watching someone take a great model and fail to prep it before they end up building the model. This causes all kinds of problems, and then they complain that it might be a bad model. The paint doesn't stick to it, and or whatever. A lot of that can be taken care of with proper preparation. This is an old model. I bought this, I am willing to bet 30 years ago. I paid $8.95 for it. It's a Revell Tony. Japanese Army called her the Flying Swallow. And the box is damaged, but the kit itself is in good condition. So the first thing you want to do when you get a new model is check the parts to make sure they are all there, and look over the sprues to see if there are any damaged parts. Also, look for parts that may have come off of the sprue. This piece right here obviously came off the sprue. Those are still good. This came off from somewhere. We should be able to find out where it is. This is an interesting little situation. The flash is holding the pieces together. So I'm going to try to separate them without causing any trouble. There we go. Look for any parts that might have been molded badly. It does happen. Make sure everything is there. And look over your instructions. You should very easily be able to tell by the parts. There's sometimes a parts list of what part is what, but familiarize yourself with the instructions a little bit. I mean, I know we're guys, most of us, and we don't like to ask instructions, but dang it, look at the instructions. That's important. The next step is to take this entire model somewhere where you will be able to wash it in warm water and not risk losing any of the parts. I find just getting
a plastic tub of some sort, putting warm soapy water in it and washing it in there works really well, because if you end up, little part comes off or something and you're doing it in the sink, it could end up going down the drain and then you're screwed. The injection molded model kits have a thin layer of mold release put on to help the parts pop out, and that mold release stays on the model when it is released to the public. So that can help, or that can prevent the glue from allowing the pieces to stick together. It can cause the paint not to adhere properly. It can cause all kinds of problems. The large pieces here are numbered on the actual piece. This is piece 40. This should have a marking on, oh, this is piece 39. I don't know if you can see these numbers or not. I don't think that's, well, maybe it'll come through, we'll see. But that's piece 41. There's a small 41 there. Sometimes you'll find part numbers on the actual piece. Other times you will find part numbers on the sprue. In this case, the smaller parts have the part number on the sprue, part 28, part 46. The propellers are part 51. Again, this is part 4, and it's on the actual piece. So you really have to look around sometimes to make sure that you do have all your parts. But if very few of them, if any have fallen off the trees, you can pretty much guarantee they're all there. When working with a model like this, this has a lot of very delicate parts. The one thing that I do not want to ever see anyone do, and I'll break my own rule, is to remove parts from the sprue by twisting them off like this. That is absolutely the wrong way to do it. You can damage the part while doing that, especially on a small, fine part. It's extremely easy to damage and then and make more work for yourself cleaning them up. It causes all kinds of problems. Think about it. If you had to have surgery, would you want the surgeon to take out your appendix by using a scalpel and carefully cutting and removing the bad appendix, or would you want him to just kind of tear your skin open, reach in, grab, and tear your appendix out? There's a proper way to remove parts from the sprue. The easiest and most common is to just take an X-Acto knife, lay the part down onto your mat, and then with an X-Acto knife, just a little bit of a press and a slice at the same time. And you cut the piece off. Sometimes they do jump. Much less cleanup needed here. And you can do it with the smallest pieces. Another common item that I actually use a lot, little tiny bit pricey for a good one, but this is specifically made for model builders. This is a sprue cutter, is what it's called. With this, it makes it easier to get some of these parts where the sprue connector might be way up off of the edge and you can't actually get the support from the base, from the mat. So just reach up in here, cut these parts. I have a lot of these scrap pieces here that I use for detailing spacecraft models or things like that. You will have a couple of little areas, get it in camera, a couple of little areas where the injection mold or the injection point went in, but you can easily take care of that. Some people will take care of it with an X-Acto blade. I find this not to be the best way because it can slip and hit you in the thumb, and or you can cut into the model and cause some damage. It's much easier to just take a small file and file down
that little injection mold point. Until you get it smooth and ready. A lot of these are available at different prices. If you get them from the jewelry section, they can be significantly cheaper, but they are very thin up here, although I have seen regular wire cutters that are longer and thinner and will work just fine. The next step is not to glue the parts together. The next step is to test fit the parts together first to see if you're going to have any problems. The fit on this is actually not bad, although I've got a little bit of a problem up here. This is where you can correct problems well ahead of time. If the parts are not fitting together properly, or if they're leaving a big gap, then that allows you to get in here, figure out what's causing it. A lot of times it is what Roger Sorensen and I used to call a greeble, which is an invisible little creature that is just standing in there holding the parts apart. You can get rid of greebles by gently filing them away. Test fit the part before gluing. Incredibly important piece of information. And follow your instructions almost always. I'll explain that in a second. Almost always follow the instructions, because the model builder usually, the model company builder usually knows the way to put things together in the proper order so that it goes together the right way. This is not always true. There have been some times when models have come out and the instructions tell you to put something together a certain way, and it's actually better if you don't do that. Only way you can really discover that is get online, find someone else who has built the model, and see how did they do it. Did they build it exactly the way the instructions say, or did they end up modifying a little bit? Another thing, there are a lot of magazines dedicated to model building, and they always have kit reviews, kit build reviews. And the kit build reviews will give you information of where there might have been a problem when they were putting it together. One other reason you might want to change the way that you're going to build a model would be if you're going to light it. It'll definitely modify the assembly, if not completely change it. Certain parts you may have to leave out completely, other parts you're going to be replacing. Think about, what do I want to do with the model? Do I want it in flight? Gear's going to be up, that means you're going to have to mount it on something. The gear is going to be down. Okay, do you want it on just a plaque or a small diorama? Are you going to light it? What kind of a paint scheme are you going to use? Think about these things before you start to build it. You'll just find it will help you out immensely. I was going to say that you should check the decals, especially in a really old model. Check for cracks, check for, problem areas. Unfortunately, there are no decals with this kit. I believe I lost them many years ago. On this old Hawker Hurricane, it does have old decals. I don't know when this model was released, but 35, 40 years ago would not surprise me in the least. So, the decal sheet, get it up here so you can see it, as you can see, is pretty useless. The areas that are supposed to be clear have yellowed badly, and it looks like they've collected dust or something like that. These would pretty much be unusable. I could go online and see who makes aftermarket decals for this model, who makes aftermarket decals for this model. Someone probably does. Not necessarily. If you can't find any aftermarket decals for your model, you may be stuck making your own. And it's not that difficult. If you have an inkjet printer or a color laser printer and a simple drawing program, painting program, there are some free ones out there. If you've got Photoshop, that's great. If you've got Illustrator, that's better.
You can make your own decals, which is something I will go into at another time. But right now, those steps, that's all you've got to do. Follow those steps to prep your model, get things ready before you're ready to start putting it together, and you will save yourself a lot of grief.
Flocking. Weird word, isn't it? Just what is flocking anyway? No, not that kind of flocking. And not that other kind of flocking you're thinking about, you dirty pervert. Get your minds out of the gutter. Jeez. No, flocking is gluing down some sort of a material that makes something look like cloth. Usually it's a powdered material or a very fine cut material. Now, that white stuff that you spray on your Christmas tree in order to look like snow, that is a type of flocking. And model builders who build dioramas, when they're putting grass or even gravel and things like that onto a diorama, that is also a kind of flocking. But what we're talking about today is using a fine powdered cloth that is glued down in order to make something look like real cloth. Car builders use it to recreate carpets or other surfaces inside of a car. We're going to be gluing it onto the Elvira couch to make it look like real velvet. Flocking is made by a lot of different companies, and it usually comes packaged
like this. This is Detail Master Flocking. It's available in many colors. Back here it says there's 37 colors. I'm not sure if that's all there are or if there's more, but you can also mix them together. Flocking is made by a lot of different companies. I know Testors makes it, Decal Master makes it, and it doesn't always come packaged in a little tube like this. In fact, Detail Master Flocking also comes just loose in a plastic bag, which is how I got the stuff that I'm going to use on the Elvira couch, which is red flocking. I put it in this bottle to make it easier to use. Now, how you apply flocking to the model makes a great deal of difference. Some people will just pour it out into a pile, pick it up, and brush it, brush it between their fingers. That doesn't work very well. You don't get even coverage. Some people will put it into an old salt shaker, and the coverage is really not a lot better, but getting a decent job done will take forever. My preferred method is to use a fine mesh strainer that you can get for your kitchen. I got this along with a bigger one for $1 at a dollar store. The two of them came together. And the nice thing with this is that you can just take some of the flocking, put it in, and then you can just tap it, and it gives you a nice even coat. There's only a couple of drawbacks to this. It still takes a while, and you often have to be able to hold the model to get it into all the nooks and crannies. I have an idea. Once you've identified the areas that you want to put the flocking material onto, paint those areas in a color that is a close match to the flocking material that you're planning on using. Flocking does not stick well to bare plastic, and in fact it won't stick to the paint either. That's what we're going to use the white glue for. But paint the area first and then work in small areas. I've got a small amount of white glue here mixed with a little bit of water because I wanted to thin it down just a little bit. You can use white glue, canopy glue, water-soluble glue is best. And you want to work in, like I said, some small areas. Don't try to do the whole thing at once. You want to put down a layer of white glue. And while it is still wet, let me get a little bit of that out of there, out of the corners so that it seeps up around the edge. While it's still wet, use whatever method that you have for putting the flocking material down. And let it sit for a few moments. And you can just tap the model to have the excess come off. Once it's dry, you can blow on it, brush it a little bit, and it'll come off. Everything that you don't want will come off. But you want to work in small areas because you don't want areas to dry before you can get the material onto them. I find no bigger than a couple of square inches is a good idea. There are some people that will go quite a bit larger, but the advantage to the tool I built is that I can put the material down, and I got a cold coming. I can put the material down and I can still hold the model. One key thing is to build or do the flocking on a piece of paper, because it's going to kind of go everywhere. And the white of the glue is showing through here, but don't worry. It's going to kind of go everywhere, and you're going to want to be able to collect that extra material and put it back into the bottle or back into the flocking gun, as it were, or whatever. But just take your time, work slowly. Try not to get any on any areas you don't want the material, but if you do, it's easy to clean it up with a Q-tip and a little bit of water. Once the glue is completely dried, you can then take a fine, soft brush. I'm using a chip brush, and just gently brush the entire area. A little bit of the glue isn't quite dry yet, but it's dry enough to demonstrate with. I want to brush away all of the loose fibers. Probably should wear a dust mask when doing this as well. If you blow your nose and it comes out red, then you're probably breathing this stuff in. Okay. There are a few areas that could use some touch-up yet, and I can go back and do that. There are a few areas, like in here and such, where the glue is not completely dry. But that's fine. This area right here didn't get any, so little touch-ups around some of the edges and things like that. And then I have to do the rest of the model. But you can see already that the texture is very different. It looks better. It actually feels better, because now it feels like cloth rather than just feeling like plastic. And it certainly looks better than painted plastic. So I suggest you try this on something. Model cars are especially good for it because of the carpeting or the interiors. It's great stuff, and it's easy to use, and you can certainly have fun with it. Just wear a mask.
Just a quick review this time on what I've done on the Draconian Fighter so far here, because I'm coming down with a pretty bad case of the flu and I'm not feeling very well, so I can't talk very much. But I have gotten some work done on this. One of the things that I've done is I've added these little rectangles back here that are supposed to be there, and I do need to put a little bit of detail on these yet, which I will put on a little bit later. I added some detail to these raised sections here, which is needed. This piece right here originally came up like it looked like a little house that you'd get, or a hotel that you'd get from a game of Monopoly. The top was right about here, and it's supposed to be a lot longer and flatter, so I cut it off down there, laid in a piece of plastic, and then puttied it on the back to give it some strength. So now I can put some detail on here. These pieces along here, sometimes when you're building a reproduction, you can't necessarily get or even figure out what was the original piece that they used. I know they used tank treads of some sort, but I don't know what kind. And I don't know that I could even get them in this scale if I could find them. So consequently, you sometimes have to fake it a little bit, and I've got to adjust this one a little bit yet. But these are model tank treads that look good in there. They are very similar to the detail that are needed. These are some grids back here that are supposed to be there, and now I get to start on this detailing all in here and on here, and there's some back here. The holes that I drilled, I got those all marked off and all drilled out and then backed with plastic, because they don't go all the way through the model. They only go in a little ways. When it comes to drilling holes in a plastic model, you have a few options. One of the options you should not use is your Dremel tool, because a Dremel tool is a very high-speed tool. And unfortunately, if you can slow it down to a very, very slow speed, it doesn't have very much torque. And the minute you put the drill bit onto the plastic, it'll stop. Once you get it up to speed so that it's got enough torque to go through the plastic, it then will melt the plastic rather than actually cut a hole. You need something that'll cut a hole. One option is to use one of these. This is a pin vise, and this one comes with 4 different collets so that it'll hold a wide variety of sized drill bits, whatever. You can also use this to hold small pieces to paint and such, but it's a good one. The only drawback to it is that you are very much stuck with using your fingers to use this. Now, this type has an expandable collet in it, so it'll hold virtually the same number that those over there will. And you can use it either by hand, or you can clamp this into a drill and have the torque that you need to be able to actually drill into the thing. Tamiya makes a very nice little hobby drill that is actually a kit you put together. And a lot of modelers will use that. It runs anywhere from about $25 to $45, depending on where you get it from. What I did, naturally, I did something outrageous. I went out and I bought an electric screwdriver, which, forward and backward, and has this keen little LED so you can see what you're doing on it. It's rechargeable. It cost me like $9. And then I mounted, using epoxy putty, I mounted the collet and shaft from an old Dremel tool. Actually, it was a Dremel-like tool, a clone, that had burned out. So now this will fit any of my Dremel collets, and I have a forward and a reverse with plenty of torque, but not enough speed to heat up and melt the plastic. And this works just great. This is absolutely fabulous. Every one of these holes was drilled with that. So that's one way you can go, and it's a lot cheaper than using the one from Tamiya. The top part of the Marauder, I've been working on opening these vents up properly back here and putting these beams in here properly. And it looks like crap right now because they are all built up with putty. The whitish putty that you're seeing over here, it's actually very light green, is very similar to Evercoat. It's cheaper, but it's very, very similar to Evercoat. And once this is, this is hardened up, I can file this down to the shape that I need and sand it, and it'll be exactly the way I want it. These back here I've been working on, and a couple little areas I've used red putty to fill in. Once those are done, the panel that fits back here will go flat back there and even, which is the way it should be on the final model. Anything else I have done on this right now, I've started working on the pieces that need to go back here. There are 3 discs that look like model tank wheels, and if I can find some that are the right size, I'll use those, but I may end up having to make those and cast them. We're going to see. But my voice is about to completely give out, so that's it for now. We'll look at this thing more next time. A couple days ago, a friend of mine came up to me and said, hey, do you think you could build me a TASER? And of course, I got all excited and immediately said, hell no, are you crazy? But he didn't mean a real TASER. He meant a prop TASER for a short film that he's making. So I did a little bit of inquiry, what do you want out of it and everything. He said, it doesn't have to look like a real TASER. I want it to look like it could be a real TASER, but don't copy an existing model. Fine, that's easy enough. Oh, and make it look kind of military. It's like, oh, okay, yeah, I suppose I could do that. Oh, and I can't have it cost more than about $10 to make because we don't have any money. Now, normally this would be a showstopper for me, but he's an old friend, and I thought, what the hell, why not? So I went to the dollar store, and I picked up this little military. It looks like it's designed to be along the line of a 45 or something along that line. Doesn't really matter, but it'll make a good base to work from. I found a couple of these pieces of plastic. They originally had chrome on them, and I soaked that in bleach for about 10 minutes or so to get the chrome off of them, and then I put plastic on the backs of them. I figured that if I removed part of the barrel, put these up onto the front in a certain area, covered the back of it, got rid of this, a few more tweaks and playing around, things like that, we could make a pretty quick, decent enough looking TASER. I mean, it doesn't have to really fire, and it will not even, there will never be a close-up of it. It's going to be grab it out of a holster and boom. So that makes life a little bit easier. So the first step, oh, by the way, it does make noise. I've already moved the speaker that was inside. I was going to take it out originally, but he suggested leave it in because that sound might give the actors something to react to. I don't know that anybody's going to be able to hear it, but what the heck. Took these 2 screws out, and I want to remove these panels. Come on, there we go. Just want to pop these off for right now, the hand grips. I'm going to probably paint those a different color. Ah, lots of nice cracking and popping. Second thing is figure out where do I want these to go and where should I cut the barrel. I'm thinking that length right there should be pretty good. And if I cut the barrel where I already mark it right there, that should work out. So I could use a number of things to cut this with. I would probably normally use my bandsaw, but I'll do it the way most people will have a chance to, and that's just using a razor saw. Come on, line up, baby. There's actually
pretty quick and easy. And you don't have to be super accurate because we're not going to see this part back here anyway. Okay, now we have made it into a snub nose. So next step will be, let's glue these on where we want them to be. I think I want it up a little high. I'm going to be filling all this area about down here in with putty anyway, so don't have a lot of time on this one. Otherwise I would be a little bit more careful on how I'm doing certain things. I'm going to have to get rid of a little ridge here. It's keeping the glue from, that'll keep the glue from getting onto the model here. There we go. Same thing on that side. The whole thing will be painted black when we're done anyway, so it should work out pretty well. I'll pop some glue in here and then I will adjust this fit. I got the plastic pieces glued to both sides. They're pretty even. They may not be 100% perfect, but they're very close. And using an electronic caliper, I measured the distance between them. It's pretty even all the way along, but I'm giving myself just a little bit of leeway. So I've got 35 millimeters, which I have marked off on this piece of plastic. And I will now cut. Is that long enough? No, it isn't. Okay. I'm going to use this, which is actually a bar sander, to cut it with because it has a little bit of sandpaper. It's got the fine grit sandpaper on the bottom, which means it helps keep it from slipping. And it's got a very straight edge on it. Now, when cutting sheet plastic, don't try to do it all in one shot. In fact, most people say to use the back of the blade and score it several times. Three isn't several, but it's not very thick. And then pop it off. Yeah, that'll fit nicely in there. I estimate I'm going to need about that much. I'm just doing this by eye right now, which is okay to do once in a while. It's not going to hurt anything to gauge it by eye if it doesn't have to be perfect. Saw a movie once where someone said, "Perfection exists only at an ending." And then she dumped the guy she was with. So, hey, you know, if you go for perfection, you'll get dumped. I guess that's what they're saying. Okay, I'm going to curl this so that it follows along this edge and comes down in the front a little bit. I'm going to build something separate to go in here to look like the end of the taser sticking out. To curl this, sheet plastic like this can be a bit of a pain to curl. Sometimes dragging it along an edge like this can help a lot. But it really depends on how thick it is and how much work you want to put into it. Some people will heat it. I find doing this but going back and forth a few times, or even just bending it a lot back and forth, helps make it softer and a little more flexible, so you can get it to follow the curves that you want a little bit easier. But either way, I may have to glue this in and then force this with clamps or with tape or something to hold it in place. And then I've got to do the same on the bottom, but not as far. Actually, I don't have to do anywhere near as much on the bottom. I only have this much space. This back here is still gluing, which is why the clamps are still there. I made a TASER cartridge out of an old Venetian blind holder, the part that actually holds the unit up onto the top of the window, with some strip styrene covering the front and around it. I still have to grind off this back here. Probably leave the sight there, even though there's no need for a sight to be right there. I want to put in a little bit of set dressing. Normally, I would fill all these areas with putty and sand them down flat. But again, they need this quickly, and it's not going to be on camera in any kind of a close-up. So I can get away with murder in a case like this. So what I'm going to do, I just want to add a little bit of set dressing here to help break up the very top of this. It's really the paint job that's going to sell this more than anything else. I'm going to paint it black or olive drab. I got to find out what they want. Do they want black or do they want olive drab? And then I'm going to scare myself by snapping the clamp there. And then I'll put in a button back here. It looks like a button because tasers tend to have, the police tasers tend to have an extra button on them that can fire the electricity repeatedly. Like I said, I'm going to paint the handles a little different color. I might make them some outrageous color like red or something, because a taser is a little different unit. It's not a standard military weapon. Come on. But I guess they're out hunting vampires or something in this movie, so, or probably zombies. Everybody does zombies nowadays. I'm going to have to tape this down to get it to stay. So I'm going to tape this, and then I will probably hit the entire thing with some primer just to see what it looks like. Well, as you can see, once it's been hit with primer, it all starts to come together a little bit better. Again, I would normally fill in a lot of these areas, but this is not really a foreground prop. It's not a hero prop. It's just a pull it out and use it in the background type thing. So it doesn't have to be perfect. That's one of the things. If you've ever seen some of the real props that are used in TV shows and movies, unless it's a hero prop, they can look pretty crappy. So I replaced this back here. The trigger, or the hammer, I replaced with a large knob there that could act as a button. Figure that the actor will hold it on there if they want to make it look like he's being shocked. And I'm going to now hit it with flat black, and I'm going to do the hand grips in gunmetal, and I think that'll be a nice contrast, and it'll look, I'm sure it'll look good enough for what they need. Well, this is the completed model. I might actually go in and do a little bit of touch up of places to make it look, you know, a little bit of silver, like the paint scratching through in some places, but I put maybe 90 minutes worth of work into this thing. I just wanted to throw something together quick that would look good quickly on camera, and it actually looks a little better than I expected it to. But this will work fine. All they need to do is they're going to use After Effects to fire to make it look like it's shooting. And once I put the batteries back in, the sound will go again, so it'll give the actors something to react to. The hand grips are painted with a gun blue paint that I toned down a little bit with some black. I've actually got to do that on this side yet. You see, this side is shinier than this side. And there are people who are going to say, yeah, but it looks like plastic. Well, that's what tasers are made out of, is plastic. You know, they're, well, carbon fiber, things like that. Button back here. But, you know, you don't have to spend a ton of time to make every prop you make look absolutely perfect. The simple fact is, take a look at how much time are they going to be on camera. What, you know, there's different scales of props, different kinds of things. A hero prop is designed for close-ups. And this actually, you could get a lot closer to this than you'd necessarily think you would with the condition it's in. You know, again, I'll dirty it up a little bit, but you could get closer to this on camera, and as long as, you know, someone was moving it or something, I mean, they're not going to know that there's parts that have holes in them and things like that. So, you know, you don't have to take a ton of time to get a decent looking prop, and, you know, the more time you take, yeah, the better it's going to look. But when it comes to prop making, sometimes you have to balance
the amount of time you have with, the amount of money you have and how much time it's going to be used. A lot of things that you take into account. That's why, again, if you see a lot of props that were used on TV shows and movies, when you see them up close, a lot of times they look kind of crappy. It's because they have to build a lot of them very fast. But I'm actually happy with this, and I think they're going to be happy with it as well. So, again, a very quick prop put together to be used in a short film, and I encourage you to just, fit pieces together, look at them, see how does this look, how does that look, does it, actually give the idea that's what it's supposed to be, and have fun with this stuff. That's the most important thing, have fun with it.